The Nintendo Switch is nearly 7 years old, and there have been quite a few incredible games that have released on the system. But today, we're not going to be talking about those. We're going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch games I actually regret buying. Now, I will say not every single game I mention in today's list is actually bad. Some of them I put on here for being overpriced. Others are on the list because I wish I bought them anywhere other than the Nintendo Switch because the port is just not great. And a few of these are on the list because their trailers, I don't think, properly depicted what type of game it was, meaning that I just felt a little bit disappointed with what it wound up being. And this goes without saying, this is just my personal opinion. If one of your favorite games have wound up on my list, then that just means that you spent your money well. We're probably going to start off with the non-spiciest take on this entire list, and the first game I kind of regret buying is Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. I was one of the people who genuinely believed that over time Game Freak was going to fix this game and make it turn into just a really solid addition to the franchise. Unfortunately, I seem to be very much wrong, and we've seen both waves of the DLC come out now, and the game still looks like, well, this. But even when you put the performance issue aside, this is one of my least played Pokemon games in a very, very long time, and I think there's a number of different reasons for this. Now, I will give Pokemon Scarlet and Violet some credit. I personally think this is one of the strongest stories we've seen in a Pokemon game for a long while. Like, Pokemon Sword and Shield was literally just everyone saving the world around you while patting you on the head and saying, don't worry about it, you just carry on your little adventure. And at least Pokemon Scarlet and Violet didn't do that. You were very much involved in the main story. The issue is, this story went completely to waste with the fact that there was no proper cutscenes and no voice acting. Even though Pokemon has a literal anime with a disgusting amount of episodes and movies. In other words, Pokemon should be the most capable of being able to deliver good cutscenes and good voice acting, and yet they don't. And then we have the shiny hunting, which to me just isn't as much fun anymore. But genuinely to me, getting rid of the sound effect and the sparkle when you see them spawn just kind of took away all the serotonin of catching a shiny. It didn't feel as good, it didn't feel as special, and if I want a shiny hunt, I wind up going back to the likes of Arceus. And whilst I appreciate the fact that Game Freak have tried something a bit different, boy would I really love it if they could come out with something that was Game of the Year worthy, and not just something that's, well, this. Sticking on the Pokemon theme, we have Detective Pikachu. Now, at the beginning, I said not all of the games on this list are necessarily bad, but some of these are because I didn't get the game I was expecting. And that is true for Detective Pikachu. My issue is that literally nothing in the trailer alluded to it being essentially a kid's game. And you can find a ton of examples of puzzle games that cater for people of different abilities and different age ranges pretty well. But Detective Pikachu didn't do that at all. And instead, I just found the puzzles to be ridiculously easy. The game essentially walked you through all of them. There was no mystery, there was no time to even sit and figure something out, because as soon as you started thinking about it, the game kind of just gave you the answer straight away. So for something marketed as a puzzle detective game, it was essentially just a story game where you did a few bits in between. Now, I will say I do appreciate the voice acting and the cutscenes that they did. Like, this is more down the road of what I expect from Pokemon. But yeah, I was just kind of a bit sad that the puzzles themselves were all a bit meh. I also want to include Fashion Dreamer on this list, and whilst it is a pretty good dressing up game, it's so expensive for what it turned out being. For £40, you were getting a game with literally no story in it whatsoever. And this means whilst I have fun playing it, I don't find myself playing it for much more than 20 or so minutes, and I always need to play it whilst watching or doing something else. Now, there have been some free updates for it that have come out in the last couple of months, but still nothing that warrants a £40 price tag. Okay, I think the next one is a bit controversial. We have Link's Awakening. Now, there is a lot of things I love about Link's Awakening. The art style, the music, everything like that, I absolutely adored. I think my issue is, I'm not really made for the old school type Zelda games. I'm more of a modern Zelda game gal. Like, give me Toon Link, give me Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, I will eat those up. But the very, very old school Zelda puzzles and the kind of lack of direction this game gave you, I wasn't made for it. I found myself constantly on walkthroughs, having to Google how to do things because I literally had no idea what to do next. It was literally a game that made me feel like my degree failed me because I was stuck so many times. I'm also not too happy at what price point it's at. I don't think it's worth the full £50. The game length is only about like 14-15 hours total, which is rather expensive when you compare it to other £50 games you can get. So overall, I just wasn't too happy with that purchase. We won't spend long on the next one because I would be surprised to find anyone who will disagree with this. And this is Mario Strikers. This is by far one of the worst games Nintendo have ever come out with, and the audacity to have it cost full price for what it was is absolutely ridiculous. Mario Strikers on the Wii was actually one of my all-time favorite games. I have so many memories of me and my brother being sat there for hours playing it and enjoying it. But Mario Strikers on the Switch just lost all of that magic, and I can genuinely tell you, I picked it up launch day to stream it on Twitch, and I have never once reached for it again for £50. And I disliked this game so much that I was unbelievably disappointed that I'd bought it digitally because I couldn't even trade it in to get a bit of my money back. This is why you should buy physical and not digital when you're buying Switch games. Next is a slightly controversial one, and we're going to say Fae Farm. However, I think this might change over time. It's very dependent on what happens next. So as you guys know, Fae Farm released on not only the PC, but also the Nintendo Switch. The issue is, on PC, you could buy the base game of Fae Farm by itself, and then buy the DLCs separately. However, if you bought it on the Switch, you were forced to buy it as a single bundle. No option to not include the DLC with it. Now, for the most part, all the faults on the Nintendo Switch version I could look away from. And in fact, I found the Nintendo Switch version to be less buggy than the PC version, even though the game looks substantially better on Steam Deck than it did on the Switch itself. My big issue is, so far, having had one of the waves of DLC come out already, I'm not sure it's worth the extra money. Wave 1 of the DLC was most definitely cute. It saw you go to a different island with a giant frog who basically allowed you to capture frogs and keep them as pets who would follow you riding a little broom. The issue was that was basically all of the substance for the DLC. And so far, we haven't been given much news as to what the second wave of the DLC is going to be like. So I hate the fact that we didn't have the option to see what the DLCs were and figure out for ourselves if they were worth the price, but had to purchase it all together. As I said though, if the next wave of the DLC comes and adds a ton new content and brings me back to the game and I enjoy it, then I'll definitely change my mind on this opinion. But I hate I had to pay for something I didn't know. Sticking on the cozy games theme, I kind of regret paying what I did for Story of Seasons A Wonderful Life, and I definitely regret buying Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town. I love the concept of Story of Seasons A Wonderful Life, but the more I played it, the more I realized the game was missing. The farming sim sides were a little bit lackluster and were definitely pulled up by the ability to make hybrid plants. And despite the fact that the game leans massively on the characters and how they grow and age over time, I found the dialogue to be mostly lackluster, with the exception of the first few days of each season. But after that, the game started to feel like a chore and like I was rushing to just get to the next time skip. Pioneers of Olive Town was unfortunately just not a great experience. This was actually one of my first dips into farming sim genres at the time, and it didn't give me the best overall view of them. I found this game to be a bit boring, overall felt very chore-like, and I genuinely thought this is what a farming sim was meant to feel like, and I was just bored by it. Turns out, it's just not a very good farming sim. You literally couldn't do anything in any of the events, they were just cutscenes that played, and the characters in the villages were just really bland, and I didn't find myself wanting to talk to them. I do think that this isn't the best of Story of Seasons games, that there have been better games that you can pick up. This was just a swing and a miss for me. Okay, the next game isn't on the Switch, but I do want to talk about it because I've spoken about it before. It's not really a regret that I bought it, but a regret that I got into it, and that is Coral Island. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like it. My issue is, the more I started playing it, the more I realized that I wish I had waited till the game had come out with all of its content. If you don't know, Coral Island is a Kickstarter game. And one thing Kickstarters typically do once they reach their goal to be fully funded is offer stretch goals. Coral Island happened to have smashed a lot of stretch goals, and as a result had a lot of content that was promised way beyond a typical farming sim. Now don't get me wrong, I have enjoyed my time with Coral Island so far. I've got a solid 50 or 60 hours in it, and there are definitely some things that make it stand out to other farming sims, like for example the merfolk and the fact that they have a whole city under the ocean that you can go and visit. You also have the festivals, which are some of the best I've ever played in a farming sim before. They're so interactive and so much fun, but the further through you get, the more you feel like there's something missing. Because, well, there is. And this can even be seen in their 2024 roadmap. The final town rank isn't available yet. There's no ability to go dating in the game yet. Whilst the merfolk are there, there's no storyline or romance or festivals you can do yet. And 2024 is also promising the addition of ocean farming, savanna farming as well. And to me, a big one is the fact that your children will actually age as time goes on. Now, if you took Coral Island and you added all of these things into it, that is going to be an absolutely incredible game. My issue is right now is it's a game that needs those extra things in it, and I kind of wish that I waited a year or so to play it when everything's in. Another game I regret buying on the Switch is House Flipper. House Flipper is a bit of a weird situation because its state on the Switch has changed an awful lot in the last like 6 months or so. Now, if you've watched this channel for a while, you know I have previously recommended House Flipper as a great cozy game to buy. The issue is that as they've introduced some DLCs to it, the Switch port has been a little bit questionable at times, making it a really difficult game to recommend because whilst it did work okay, it has been incredibly buggy. Also, once I discovered what House Flipper looked like on my PC versus how it plays on the Switch, I realized how much I was missing out on. Not just on the ability to use a mouse being a lot easier, but also just in how the game looks. It looks really nice on the PC, and on the Switch, less so. My only hope is that when House Flipper 2 comes out, they put a little bit more time into optimizing it for the Switch, because even the Steam Deck version of House Flipper 2 doesn't look great on the settings they give you, and you kind of have to fiddle around to make the game look half decent. So definitely a game I love, I just don't like playing it on the Switch. And I feel similarly about games like Everdream Valley, My Time at Sandrock, and to a certain extent Mineko's Night Market, all of which are nice games, but once I discovered how they looked and ran on the PC, found it really hard to deal with the Switch port. Mineko's Night Market has a kind of extra layer to it though, and that is the game that I thought it was from the description and the trailers wasn't exactly what it turned out to be. The trailers made this sound like this was going to be a very story-driven live sim. And don't get me wrong, I did really enjoy the story parts to the game. What I wasn't expecting was how much of it was just resource grinding. I found the game was just a constant struggle of being too poor to progress the game further, and constantly having to spend hours upon hours going out, grinding for materials and resources, crafting, and waiting for the next night market to finally progress the story. And it overall just really slowed down the narrative of the game. A part of me feels like the money system just wasn't that balanced. It felt so difficult to get money, and obviously still there are some issues with the Switch port, mainly being the loading times are just still quite long for a game where you have to go in and out of your house as many times as you do need to. It's still a good game, it just wasn't quite the game I had envisaged me picking up. Then we have Splatoon 3. I've tried so hard to like this and get into this, and I just don't have the same love I have for this as I did Splatoon 2, and that makes me unbelievably sad. Now, I was really hoping this year was going to be the year I could get back into it. I know there's some DLCs coming out, and the trailers genuinely look pretty good, but after hours upon hours of trying, I just don't enjoy it, and I really truly cannot figure out what the difference is between Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3 that made me lose my love for the game. I think right now the main issue is that I'm not the only person feeling this, which means that when you log back into the game, a large part of the casual player base don't play it, which means that you're up against people who spend hours upon hours loving this game while you get absolutely demolished. I even tried to play this game a few days after Christmas in the hope that some people got gifted it, mainly kids, so I could finally beat some people. But no, I still suck at it, and some of this is most definitely a skill issue, but I don't enjoy it enough or have any reason to want to get better. And that makes me sad, because I didn't exactly suck at Splatoon 2, I don't think, but I suck at this one. Now, the next two games aren't necessarily bad games, they're just not my vibe, and this is any of the Warriors style games. Mainly the Hyrule Warriors and the Fire Emblem version of Warriors games. I love Fire Emblem, I love Zelda, and I was really hoping I could get into both of these games, but I just couldn't. Now, I will give them credit. I do really like the story and I do really like the cutscenes. Just to me, the cutscene payoff was not worth the kind of repetitive gameplay style that is just a Warriors game. That is the format of them, which is why I say they're not bad, they're just not my jam. And I found for me, the better way to experience this was to either watch someone do a playthrough or just watch YouTube channels that have all of the cutscenes spliced together and kind of watch the story like that. It was pretty enjoyable doing it that way. I'd argue more enjoyable than I found the game playing. They're not bad games, just make sure you know what you're getting into with the gameplay style first of all. And the final games on this list are the sports-like games. We're talking Switch Sports, Mario Tennis, and Mario Golf. Now, I think this is just a negative repercussion of growing up. Wii Sports was one of the games I enjoyed the most. I remember many hours of me and my brother playing it together when we got home from school, at weekends, even at Christmas and that sort of thing. And I was hoping when I picked up Switch Sports that was going to be how I enjoyed playing this once again. The difference is none of these games ever get picked up because 99.9% of the time I'm playing the Switch, I'm playing alone completely by myself. And despite my hope that this would get me to play games with my family members again when we're all in the same place, we just prioritize other things and other ways of spending quality time with each other, and gaming on the Switch is no longer up there. And honestly, if we do decide to play Switch games together, we either play the good Mario Party, which is this one. Don't buy this one. This one to me just was nowhere near as fun as Mario Party Superstars was. But as a whole family game, everyone seems to enjoy playing Mario Party more than we do playing the likes of Switch Sports, so that gets brought out more. Or we wind up playing the 51 board games game, which is wild considering they're literally just board games, but that has been a staple in this family for a while. That's it for the Switch games I regret buying, but if you want to see some cozy games coming out in 2024 that I cannot wait to play, click this video here.